Chapter 11. A Hiss of Crimson Silk. Unsavory. To Greyson, it was like a piece of gristle in his mouth. He couldn't spit it out, but he couldn't swallow it either. All he could do was continue to chew it, hoping it would somehow grind down into something digestible. Unsavories stole things, but never got away with it. They threatened people, but never followed through. They spouted profanities and oozed attitude like a mask, but that's all it was, a stench. The Thunderhead always prevented them from accomplishing anything that was truly bad. And the Thunderhead was so good at it. The Unsavories had long since given up everything beyond pretty misdemeanors, posturing, and complaining. The authority interface had a whole bureau dedicated to dealing with them, because Unsavories weren't allowed to talk to the Thunderhead directly. They were always on probation and had to check in with their officers on a regular basis. The ones who pushed the limit were actually assigned their own personal peace officer to monitor them every hour of the day. It was a successful program, as evidenced by how many Unsavories actually married their peace officers and became productive citizens again. Greyson couldn't imagine himself being among people like that. He had never stolen anything. There had been kids at schools who played at being unsavory, but it was never serious. It was just a thing that kids did and grew out of. Greyson was inoculated with a dose of his new life even before arriving home. The public car he took read him the Riot Act even before it left the Nimbus Academy. Please be aware, it told him, that any attempt at vandalism will result in the immediate suspension of this journey and expulsion to the roadside. Greyson pictured an ejector seat launching him skyward. He would have laughed at the thought if there wasn't a small part of him that believed it might actually be like that. Don't worry, he told the car. I've been expelled once today and once is enough. All right then, said the car. Tell me your destination, avoiding the use of abusive language, please. On the way home, he stopped at the market, realizing that his refrigerator had been empty for 2 months. In the checkout line, the checker eyed him suspiciously, as if he were going to pocket a pack of gum. Even the people in line felt cold to him. The aura of prejudice was palpable. Why would people choose this? He wondered, and yet people did. He had a cousin who was unsavory by choice. It's freeing not to care about anyone or anything, his cousin had told him. Ironic, because he'd had iron chains surgically implanted into his wrists, a body modification trendy among unsavories these days. So much for being free. And it wasn't just the strangers who treated him differently. Once he got home and unpacked what little belongings he had taken with him to the academy, he sat down and messaged a few friends to let them know that he was back and things hadn't gone the way he had hoped. Greyson had never been the kind to cultivate deep friendships. There was no one to whom he had ever bared his soul or explored his deepest vulnerabilities. He had the Thunderhead for that, after all, which meant that he now had nothing. His friends were fair weather at best. Cohorts of convenience. He got no responses, and he marveled at how easily the veneer of friendship could be stripped to the raw. Eventually, he called a few of them. Most just let the call go to voicemail. The ones who picked up clearly had done so accidentally, not realizing it was him calling. Their screens showed that he was now marked unsavory, so they quickly, and as politely as they could, ended the call. Although no one went so far as to block him, he doubted they'd take a communication from him again in any form. At least, not until the big red U was removed from his profile. What he did get were messages from people he didn't know. Dude, one girl wrote, welcome to the pack. Let's get drunk and break something. Her pic showed a shaved head and a penis tattooed on her cheek. Greyson sat his computer and hurled it against the wall. How's that for breaking something? He said to the empty room. This perfect wall might have a place for everyone, but Greyson's place was not in the same universe as the girl with the penis tattoo. He retrieved his computer, which, indeed, had cracked, but it was still functional. No doubt a new one was being dispatched to him by drone, unless unsavories didn't get their broken hardware automatically replaced. He got online again, deleted all incoming messages, because they were all from the other unsavory welcome wagoners, and in his frustration wrote a message to the Thunderhead. How could you do this to me? The response was immediate. It said, access to the Thunderhead's conscious cortex is denied. He thought this day couldn't possibly get any worse, and then the Scython showed up at his door. Safety's Curry and Anastasia had no reservation at the Louisville Grand Americana Hotel. They just walked up to the registration desk and were given a room. This was the way of things. Sites never needed reservations, or tickets, or appointments. At hotels, they were usually given the best room available, and if there were none, a room would magically appear in their inventory. Scythe Curry was not interested in the best. She requested their most modest two-bedroom suite. "How long will you be staying with us?" asked the clerk. He had been nervous and fidgety from the moment they approached. Now his eyes darted back and forth between them, as if taking his eyes off one of them for any length of time would prove lethal. "We will stay until we choose to leave," Scythe Curry told him, taking the key. Citra offered him a smile to set him a bit more at ease as they left. They refused the bellhop and chose to carry their own bags. No sooner had they put them down in the suite than Scythe Curry was ready to go out. "Regardless of our personal concerns, we have a responsibility to uphold. There are people who must die," she told Citra. "Will you clean with me today?" It was amazing to Citra that Marie could already put the tag behind her and get on with business as usual. "Actually," said Citra, "I have to follow up on a cleaning I said last month." Scythe Curry sighed. "Your method makes so much more work for you. Is it far?" Just an hour by train. I'll be back before dark." Scythe Curry stroked her long beard, contemplating her junior scythe. "I could go with you, if you like," she offered. "I could clean just as easily there as here." "I'll be fine, Marie. Moving target, right?" For an instant, she thought Scythe Curry would insist on coming, but in the end, she didn't push the issue. "Fine. Just keep your wits about you, and if you see anything that seems remotely suspicious, let me know immediately." Citra was sure the only suspicious thing at the moment was herself, because she had lied about where she was going. In spite of Scythe Curry's admonition, Citra could not just walk away from the boy who had saved their lives. She had already done requisite research on him, Greyson Timothy Tolliver. He was about 6 months older than Citra, although he looked younger. His life record showed absolutely nothing of note, either positive or negative. That wasn't unusual. He was like most people. He simply lived. His existence had neither highlights nor low points. That is, until now. His tepid, milquetoast existence had now been spiced and broiled in a single day. When she looked at his life record, the blinking and savory warning juxtaposed with the dull, innocent eyes of his picture almost made her laugh. This kid was about as unsavory as a popsicle. He lived in a modest townhouse in Higher Nashville, 2 sisters in college, dozens of older half-siblings from whom he was completely disconnected, and absentee parents. As for his timely appearance in the road, his statement about it was already public record, so Citra was able to review it. She had no reason to doubt his word. Were the situation reversed, she might have done the same. Now that he was no longer a Nimbus student, contact with him wasn't forbidden, so paying him a visit violated no law. She wasn't sure exactly what she hoped to accomplish by seeking him out, but she knew that until she did, the moment of his death would linger with her. Perhaps she just needed to see with her own eyes that he lived again. She had become so used to seeing the light in people's eyes go out for good, perhaps a part of her needed evidence of his revival. When she arrived on his street, she saw a squad car belonging to the Blade Guard, the light police force that served the Scython, parked out front. For an instant, she considered just leaving, because if officers of the Blade Guard saw her, word of Scythe Anastasia's appearance here would surely make it back to Scythe Curry. That was one reprimand she wanted to avoid. What convinced her to stay were the memories of her own experience with the Blade Guard. Unlike peace officers, who answered to the Thunderhead, the Blade Guard had no oversight but the Scython, which meant they could get away with a whole lot more. Basically, whatever sides allowed them to get away with. The door was unlocked, so she let herself in. There, in the living room, Grayson Tolliver sat in a straight-backed chair, and looming over him were two brawny guards. His hands were locked into the same kind of joint steel bracelets that had been put on Citra when she was accused of having killed Scythe Faraday. One of the guards held a device that Citra had never seen before. The other was speaking to the boy. "Of course, none of that has to happen if you tell us the truth," Citra heard the guard say, although she missed the list of unpleasantries the guard was threatening. So far, Tolliver seemed unharmed. His hair was mussed a bit, and he looked woefully resigned, but other than that, he seemed fine. He was the first to see her there, and when he did, there was a spark of something in him, lifting him out of that sad, impassive state, as if his revival had somehow not been complete until he saw that she, too, was still alive. The guards followed his gaze and saw her. She made sure that she spoke first. "What's going on here?" Citra asked, in her haughtiest Scythe Anastasia's voice. For an instant, the guards looked panicked, but quickly became subservient. "Your Honor, we didn't know you'd be here. We were just questioning the suspect." "He's not a suspect." "Yes, Your Honor. Sorry, Your Honor." She took a step toward the boy. "Did they hurt you?" "Not yet," he said. Then he nodded to the device that the taller guard held. "But they used that thing to set off my pain nanites." She'd never even known such a device existed. She put her hand out to the guard who held it. "Give it to me." And when he hesitated, she got a little louder. "I am a Scythe, and you serve me. Hand it over, or I will report you." Still, he didn't hand it to her. That's when a new piece entered this little game of chess. As Scythe stepped in from another room. He must have been there all along, listening, gauging the interaction for the right moment to insert himself. He timed it perfectly to catch Citra off guard. She recognized his robe right away. Crimson silk that hissed as he walked. His face was soft, almost feminine, the result of having set his age back so many times that his basic bone structure had lost its definition, like river stones eroded by a relentless flow. "Scythe Constantine," Citra said, "I didn't know you were in charge of this investigation." The only good news about this was that if he was investigating the attempt on her and Marie's lives, then he wasn't out hunting for Rowan. Constantine offered her a polite but unsettling grin. "Hello, Scythe Anastasia," he said. "What a breath of fresh air you are in a toysome, eh?" He seemed like a cat that had cornered its prey and was about to play with it. She really didn't know what to make of him. As she had told Rowan, Scythe Constantine was not one of the durable sides of the New Order who killed for pleasure, nor did he align himself with the old guard who saw cleaning as a noble and almost sacred duty. Like his red silk robe, he was slippery and smooth, siding with whoever's agenda fit the moment. Citra did not know if that made him impartial in this investigation or dangerous, because she had no idea where his loyalties lay. Regardless, he was a formidable presence, and Citra felt out of her league. Then she remembered she was not Citra Tranova anymore. She was Scythe Anastasia, recalling that transformed her, and allowed her to stand up to him. Now, his grin seemed more calculating than intimidating. "I'm pleased that you're taking an interest in our investigation," he said. "But I wish you would have let us know you were coming. We would have prepared refreshments for you." Grayson Tolliver was well aware that Scythe Anastasia might have just hurled herself in front of a speeding vehicle for him, because clearly Scythe Constantine was just as dangerous as a hurtling hunk of metal. Grayson knew very little about the structure and complexities of the Scythedom, but it was obvious that Scythe Anastasia was putting herself on the line by standing up to a senior Scythe. Still, she projected such a commanding presence, it made Grayson wonder if she was actually much older than she appeared. "Are you aware that this boy saved my and Scythe Curie's lives?" she asked Constantine. "Under questionable circumstances," he responded. "Are you planning to inflict some sort of bodily harm on him?" If we are, then I'd have to remind you that the intentional infliction of pain goes against everything we stand for, and I will bring you up for discipline in conclave." The cool expression on Scythe Constantine's face faded, but only a little. Grayson didn't know if this was a good thing or bad. Constantine regarded Scythe Anastasia a moment more, then turned to one of the guards. Be so kind as to tell Saint Anastasia what I ordered you to do. The guard glanced at Saint Anastasia, met her eye, but Grayson could see he was unable to hold the gaze for more than a moment. You instructed us to cuff the suspect, turn off his pain manage, then threaten him with several forms of physical pain. Precisely, said Seth Constantine. Then he turned back to Anastasia. You see, there is no malfeasance whatsoever. Seth Anastasia's indignation mirrored what Grayson was feeling, but would not dare express. No malfeasance? You were planning to beat him until he told you whatever you wanted to hear. Constantine sighed again, and turned back to the guard. What did I instruct you to do if your threats yielded no results? Were you instructed to follow through on any of those threats? No, Your Honor. We were to come get you if his story didn't change. Constantine spread his arms in a beatific gesture of innocence. It made the dropping red sleeves of his robe look like the wings of some firebird ready to engulf the younger Scythe. There, you see, he said. There was never any intent to hurt the boy. I have found that in his painless world, the mere threat of pain is always enough to coerce a guilty party to confess wrongdoing. But this young man sticks to his story against the most implicit of threats. I am thus convinced he is telling the truth. And had you allowed me to complete the interrogation, you would have seen this for yourself. Grayson was sure they could all feel the relief flow from him like an electrical charge. Was Constantine telling the truth? Grayson was in no position to judge. He always found sights to be inscrutable. They lived their lives on a plane above, greasing the gearwork of the world. He had never heard of a scythe who intentionally inflicted suffering beyond the suffering that comes with cleaning, but just because he hadn't heard of it didn't mean it wasn't possible. I am Honorable Scythe and hold to the same ideas that you do, Anastasia, Scythe Constantine said. As for the boy, he was never in any danger, although now I'm tempted to clean him just to spite you. He let that sit for a moment. Grayson's heart missed a beat, or two. Scythe Anastasia's face, which had gone righteously red, paled a few degrees. But I won't, Scythe Constantine said, for I am not a spiteful man. Then what kind of man are you, Scythe Constantine? Asked Anastasia. He tossed her the key to the handcuffs. The kind who won't soon forget what happened here today. Then he left with a flutter of his robe, his guards following in his wake. Once they were gone, Scythe Anastasia wasted no time in removing Grayson's cuffs. Did they hurt you? No, Grayson had to admit. Like he said, it was all threats. But now that it was over, he realized he was no better off than when they had come. His relief was quickly flooded with the same bitterness that had plagued him since the moment he was kicked to the Nimbus Academy proverbial scarp. Why are you here anyway? He asked her. I suppose I just wanted to thank you for what you did. I know it cost you a lot. Yes, Grayson admitted flatly. It did. So, with that in mind, I'm offering you a year of immunity from cleaning. Is the least I can do. She held out her ring to him. He'd never had immunity from cleaning before. He had never ever been this close to a scythe before this hellish week, much less a scythe's ring. It shined even in the diffuse light of the room, but its center was oddly dark. Although he wanted to keep staring at it, he found he had no desire to accept the immunity the ring would give. I don't want it, he told her. She was surprised by that. Don't be stupid. Everybody wants immunity. I'm not everybody. Just shut up and kiss the ring. Her aggravation just fed his. Was that what his sacrifice was worth? A temporary get-out-of-death-free card? The life he thought he was going to lead was gone. So what was the point of a guarantee to prolong it? Maybe I want to be cleaned, he told her. I mean, everything I had to live for has been stolen from me, so why live at all? Scythe Anastasia lowered her ring. Her expression became serious. Too serious. Fine, she said. Then I'll clean you. Grayson hadn't expected that. She could do that. In fact, she could do it before he had the chance to stop her. As much as he didn't want to kiss her ring, he didn't want to be cleaned either. It would mean that the entire purpose of his existence would be to have thrown himself in front of her car. He had to live long enough to forge a purpose greater than that, even if he had no idea what that purpose might be. Then, Scythe Anastasia laughed. She actually laughed at him. If you could only see the look on your face. Now it was Greyson's turn to go red, not from anger but from embarrassment. Perhaps he wasn't quite done feeling sorry for himself, but he wouldn't feel sorry for himself in front of her. You're welcome, he said. There, you thanked me. I accepted it. Now you can go. But she didn't. Greyson really didn't expect her to. Is your story true? She asked. If one more person asked him that, he felt he might just blow up and leave his own crater. So he told her what he thought she wanted to hear. I don't know who planted those explosives. I wasn't part of the plot. You didn't answer my question. She waited, patiently. She made no threats. She offered no incentive. Greyson had no idea if he could trust her, but realized that he didn't care anymore. He was done dissembling and spouting half-truths. No, he told her, I lied. Admitting it felt freeing. Why? She asked. She didn't seem angry, just curious. Because it was better for everyone if I did. Everyone but you, he shrugged. I'd be in the same boat no matter what I told them. She accepted that and sat down across from him, staring at him the whole time. He didn't like that. She was once more on a plane above, thinking her secret thoughts. Who could know what machinations were spinning in the mind of a socially sanctioned killer? And then she nodded. It was the Thunderhead, she said. It knew about the plot, but it couldn't warn us, so we needed someone it trusted who could. Someone who the Thunderhead knew would take the information and act on his own. He was amazed at her insightfulness. She figured it out when no one else had. Even if that were true, he said, I wouldn't tell you. She smiled. I wouldn't want you to. She looked at him a moment more, her expression not just kindly, but maybe a bit respectful. Imagine that, Greyson Tolliver getting respect from a scythe. She stood to leave. Greyson found he was sorry to see her go. Being left alone with his blurring cue and his own defeatist thoughts was something he was not looking forward to. I'm sorry you were marked unsavory, she said just before she left. But even if you're not allowed to talk to the Thunderhead, you can still access all its information. Websites, databases, everything but its consciousness. What good is all that without a mind behind it to guide you? You still have your own mind, she pointed out. That's got to be worth something. The basic income guarantee predated my ascension to power. Even before me, many nations had begun to pay their citizens for merely existing. It was necessary because with increasing automation and employment was rapidly becoming the norm rather than the exception, so the concept of welfare and social security was reinvented as the big. All citizens had a right to a small piece of the pie, regardless of their ability or desire to contribute. Humans, however, have a basic need beyond just income. They need to feel useful, productive, or at least busy, even if that busy work provides nothing to society. Therefore, under my benevolent leadership, anyone who wants a job can have one, and at salaries above the peak, so that there is incentive to achieve, and a method of measuring one's success. I help every citizen find employment that is fulfilling for them. Of course, very few of the jobs are necessary, since they could all be accomplished by machines, but the illusion of purpose is critical to a well-adjusted population. The Thunderhead. Chapter 12. A Scale of 1 to 10. Greyson's alarm went off before sunrise. He had not set it to do so. Since coming home, he had no reason to wake up early. There was nothing pressing to be done, and when he was awake, he tended to crawl back under the covers until he could no longer justify it. He had not yet even begun to search for employment. Work was, after all, optional. He would be provided for even if he made no discernible contribution to the world. And right now, he had no desire to contribute anything to the world but his bodily waste. He slapped the alarm off. What's going on? He asked. Why are you waking me up? They took a few moments of silence to realize that the Thunderhead was not going to respond to that question as long as he was unsavory. So he sat up and looked at his bedside screen to see a message turning the room red with its angry color. Appointment with probation officer at 8 a.m. Failure to appear will result in 5 demerits. Greyson had a vague idea what demerits were, but had no clue how to value them. Did 5 demerits add 5 days onto the unsavory status? 5 hours? 5 months? He had no idea. Perhaps he should take a class in unsavorism. What does one wear to meet with a probation officer? He wondered. Should he dress up or down? As bitter as he was about all of this, he realized that impressing his probation officer couldn't hurt, so he found a clean shirt and slacks, then put on the same tie he'd worn to his appointment at the authority interface back in Fulcrum City, when he thought he still had a life. He flagged down a public car, which again warned him about the consequences of vandalism and abusive language, then left for the local AI office. He was determined to be early and make a positive enough impression to maybe knock a day or two off his status downgrade. The Higher Nosville AI office building was much smaller than the one in Fulcrum City. It was only 4 stories, and of red brick instead of grey granite. On the inside, however, it appeared much the same. He was not ushered to a comfortable audience room this time. Instead, he was directed to the Office of Unsavory Affairs, where he was instructed to take a number and wait in a room with dozens of other unsavories who clearly didn't want to be there. Finally, after the better part of an hour, Greyson's number came up and he went to the window, where a low-level Nimbus agent checked his ID and told him things, most of which he already knew. Greyson Tolliver permanently expelled from the Nimbus Academy and denigrated to unsavory status for a minimum of 4 months, due to an extreme violation of the side-state separation. That's me, said Greyson. At least now he knew how long his status downgrade would last. She looked up from her tablet and offered him a smile that was as mirthless as that of a bot. For a moment, he wondered if she might actually be one, but then remembered that the Thunderhead did not have robots in its offices. The AI was supposed to be the human interface to the Thunderhead, after all. How are you feeling today? She asked. Fine, I guess, he said, and smiled back at her. He wondered if his smile looked as insincere as hers. I mean, annoyed at having been woken up so early, but an appointment is an appointment, right? She marked something down in her tablet. Please, rate your level of annoyance on a scale of 1 to 10. Are you serious? We can't proceed with intake until you answer the question. 5? He said. No, 6. The question made it worse. Have you experienced any unfair treatment since being marked unsavory? Anyone refusing your service, or in any way infringing upon your rights as a citizen? The rude way in which she asked the question made him want to smack that tablet out of her hand. At least, she could have pretended to care about his answer the way she had pretended to smile. People look at me like I've just killed their cat. She looked at him as if he had just told her that he actually had killed a few cats. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about the way people look at you, but if your rights are ever infringed upon, it's important that you let your probation officer know. Wait, you're not my probation officer? She sighed. I'm your intake officer. You'll meet your probation officer after we're done with intake. Will I have to take a number again? Yes. Then please change my annoyance level to 9. She threw him a glance and made him try on her tablet, then took a moment to process whatever information on him she had. Your nanites are reporting a decrease in your endorphin levels over the past few days. This may indicate an early stage of depression. Do you wish to have a mood adjustment now, or wait until you've reached the threshold? I'll wait. It may require a trip to your local wellness center. I'll wait. Very well. She swiped the screen, closed his file, and told him to follow the blue line on the floor, which led him out to the hallway and to another large room, where, as promised, he was told to take a number. Finally, after what seemed like forever, his number came up, and he was sent to an audience room that was nothing like the comfortable one he had been in last time. This was, after all, an unsavory audience room. The walls were institutional beige, the floor ugly green tile, and the table, which had nothing on it, was slate grey, with 2 hard wooden chairs on either side. The only decoration in the room was a soulless sailboat picture on the wall, which was perfectly appropriate for a room like this. He waited another 15 minutes, then finally his probation officer entered. "Good morning, Greyson," said Agent Traxler. He was the last person Greyson expected to see today. What are you doing here? Haven't you ruined my life enough?" "I haven't the foggiest notion what you're talking about." Of course he'd say that. Plausible deniability. He hadn't asked Greyson to do anything. In fact, he had expressly told him what not to do. "I apologize for the wait," Traxler said. "If it makes you feel any better, the Thunderhead makes us agents wait before meeting with you as well." "Why?" Traxler shrugged. "It's a mystery." He sat down across from Greyson, glanced at the soulless sailboat with the same disgust that Greyson had, then explained his presence here. "I have been transferred here from Fulcrum City, and I've been demoted from being a senior agent to being a probation officer at this regional facility. So you're not the only one who's had a downgrade in status over this matter." Greyson folded his arms, not feeling an ounce of sympathy for the man. "I trust you're beginning to adjust to your new life." "Not at all," Greyson said flatly. "Why did the Thunderhead mark me unsavory?" "I thought you'd be smart enough to figure that out." "Guess not." Traxler raised his eyebrows and released a slow breath to stress his disappointment at Greyson's lack of insight. "As an unsavory, you are required to attend probationary meetings on a regular basis. These meetings will provide a way for you and me to communicate without raising the suspicion of anyone who might be watching you. Of course, for that to work, I'd have to be transferred here and made your probation officer." "Ah, so there was a reason why Greyson was denigrated on unsavory. It was part of some larger plan. He thought he'd feel better once he knew why, but he didn't." "I do feel sorry for you," Traxler said. "Savourism is a difficult job for those who don't desire it." "Can you rate your pity on a scale of 1 to 10? Greyson asked. Agent Traxler chuckled. "A sense of humor, no matter how dark, is always a good thing." Then he got down to business. "I understand that you've been spending most of your days and nights at home. As your friend and advisor, might I suggest that you begin frequenting places where you can meet other unsavories and perhaps generate new friendships that could ease this time for you?" "I don't want to." "Perhaps you do want to," Agent Traxler said gently, almost obsessively. "Perhaps you want to fit in so much that you begin to behave like an unsavory and dress like an unsavory and get yourself some sort of unsavory body modification to show how fully you embrace your new status." Greyson said nothing at first. Traxler waited for Greyson to fully wrap his mind around the suggestion. "And if I were to embrace my status?" asked Greyson. "Then I'm sure you'd learn things," said Traxler. "Perhaps things that not even the Thunderhead knows. It does have blind spots, you know. Small ones, certainly, but they do exist." "You're asking me to be an undercover Nimbus agent?" "Of course not," Traxler said with a grin. "Nimbus agents are required to attend 4 years at the academy and do an additional year of mind-numbing field work before getting an actual assignment. But you're just an unsavory." He patted Greyson on the shoulder. "An unsavory who happens to be very well connected." Then Traxler stood. "I'll see you in a week, Greyson." And he left without as much as a backward glance. Greyson felt dizzy. He was angry. He was excited. He felt used. He felt put to use. This was not what he wanted. Or was it? "You, Greyson, are more special than you know," the Thunderhead had told him. Was this the Thunderhead's plan for him all along? He still had a choice in the matter. He could still stay out of trouble, as he had done his whole life, and in a few months his normal status would be restored. He could go back to living his life such as it was, or he could spiral down this new path, a path that was the opposite of everything he knew himself to be. The door opened and some nameless Nimbus agent said, "Excuse me, but now that your meeting is over, you'll have to vacate the room immediately." Greyson's instincts told him to apologize and leave, but he knew what path he now needed to take, so he leaned back in his chair, smiled at the agent, and said, "Go screw yourself." The agent gave him a demerit and returned with a security guard to eject him from the room. While the Office of Unsavory Affairs might appear inefficient, there is method behind the madness that it generates. Simply put, unsavories have a need to despise the system to facilitate that I had to create a system worthy of loathing. In reality, there is no actual need for people to take a number or to wait for long periods of time. There isn't even a need for an intake agent. It's all designed to make unsavories feel as if the system is wasting their time. The illusion of inefficiency serves the specific purpose of creating an audience around which unsavories can bond. The Thunderhead.